remember putting on Payless shoes, and then like the test I had to do before I got the shoes was sprint back and forth across the carpeted aisles of the store. And you would swear that you were going faster because there was something going on with the rubber in the shoes where it was fresher and it was exhilarating.
Welcome to the Creative Slash Podcast, where we explore what happens when creativity collides with everything else. I'm Brad Woodard, and I'm joined here with my good friend and co-host, Dustin Lee. Whether you're an artist just looking to grow your following, or you're just curious about where creativity can take you, this is your weekly dose of real talk about making it as a creative human. In today's episode, we discuss a deceptively simple question. How can pulling inspiration from our childhood help us make work that we're excited about today? Both of us would consider ourselves very nostalgic people, so we dive into what sparked our creative preferences, as well as how we tackle that tension between imitation and homage. It feels like a really fine line sometimes. But anyways, let's jump right into it. It's a good one. Dustin, you love your job, right?
Some days.
You love what you do?
Well, I don't. Some days I love it. I would say I definitely love it more than if I say had continued working at like the bank as a personal banker. So yeah, for sure. I like it more. I mean, I think it all is relative to what, you have your good days and bad days no matter what you do.
For sure. So your company's name is Retro Supply, and you sell vintage inspired products, digital products to creatives. Where did that come from? Because I always wonder, because like with Brave the Woods is my company, and I do a lot of artwork that's definitely inspired by kind of mid-century era aesthetics. For you, like, what was that path like as a child? Did you gravitate towards these kind of things, like vintage stuff, or is the stuff you're making now kind of representative of what you liked as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because you look all these different places, I think, when you're young to find what you're excited about. And I looked a lot. Like the first half of my 20s, I was just searching for what that was, and almost by accident, because out of desperation, I had this child on the way, and my wife and my first child, a daughter, and I was like so desperate to make something work that I did not think about it. And when I didn't think about it, I naturally reverted back to things from my childhood. And what was comforting to me was mid-century things. I didn't call it mid-century things at the time. It was just my grandma's house. And it was one of the stipulations when she inherited the home was from my great aunt was that they kept it intact to how it was. So it looked just like the whole thing was just like a mid-century museum. I mean, everything. It was beautiful, and the furniture wasn't moved. So I remember playing, like one of the first copies of Monopoly probably was like a really old copy of Monopoly, or puzzles and books that were in this closet in the kitchen that was all stuff from like the 1950s and the 1960s. And at the time when you're a kid, you're not thinking it's from the 50s or 60s. You're just thinking you really like it, and it's just there. That becomes comforting, and it created tracks. So when I started to make Retro Supply, I instinctively just did something that was all around me and that I was interested in. And that was getting these materials and scanning them and trying to recreate these things. So it made a big impact on me.
Your story sounds very similar to mine in the sense that, like, people always asking, like, where do you get the inspiration to do the type of work you're doing? Which the reason I think we're so good of friends is that a lot of the stuff that we do overlaps, right? Like, and we've, made lots of tools together because of that. But growing up, it was also my grandma and my grandpa. It was their farmhouse in West Virginia that I spent a lot of time at during the summers. And we all kind of were designated different rooms, and I had my uncle's old room, and everything in there was just still as it was. He was way into like science and things like that. So I had a lot of science books from the 60s, 70s in that room. And I remember having like access to the entire suite of Hardy Boys books that I would read during the summer. And there was just like everything about that house was screaming the 60s. And so it became, I don't think at the time, like you said, I don't think at the time I was looking for inspiration, right? Because I didn't even know, I didn't as a young artist, I was just drawing whatever. But I do feel like as I got older and I started my career, I started finding myself kind of longing for that kind of stuff, and it was really nostalgic to me, and it made me happy to see and collect. You can, I mean, for those of you who are watching this, you can see behind me, it's just full, and in the back of Dustin's office there's just so many things that you can collect, artifacts from that era that I love to be surrounded by and inspired by. Um, but it's definitely brings me a lot of joy because, you know, you and we like to go antiquing together and junking together, whatever you want to call it. I call it antiquing. Some people call it junking, but I would say, like, I think the joy of like looking through that stuff really does bring me back to a happy time. And the fact that I get to incorporate that in the work that I do every day is really I think it brings me a lot of fulfillment in the day-to-day stuff. So it makes my job a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I think that we're all products of the things that we're all kids like that just get more sophisticated. I heard this. Where did I hear this? It was such a good insight. It was like we're all products of like when we're kids, we just get better at justifying our feelings about things. So
Yeah,
when you're a kid, you know, you're not very sophisticated at rationalizing why you want the toy or why you want these new shoes or whatever. And as you get
sure.
older, you get much better at being like, well, you know, look at the tread on these shoes and, you know, it's going to last forever. It just will pay for itself. When you're a kid, you're just like, it looks cool. But these things, I think they stay with us. And I think it's the same thing with the work we do, our diets, the work we do, the movies we like, the books we read. We always are trying to kind of go back to these certain things, honestly, whether we want to or not. I mean,
Yeah. You kind
so
of
I,
get pulled back.
yeah, and I think that's why, you know, we were talking about how does pulling inspiration from your childhood make the work you're doing more exciting. And I think the way that it does is when you're able to capture that feeling of things feel easy because you're going into a comfortable place of things that feel very comforting and normal to you. And that makes it easier. It's very hard when you feel lost in an environment or a way of doing things that isn't that. But
It
I
makes you think
guess
of authenticity. Sorry, like you're what it sounds like you're getting to is like it almost doesn't like on top of like you just kind of gravitate towards it. I feel like you feel more authentically yourself when you're like doing those things or using that as inspiration. Like for me at least, that's how it feels. Like it's just I wouldn't be authentic if I was doing something like a grungy skateboarding style or whatever because I didn't grow up skateboarding. You know, like it's just not it's just not what I know or what I grew up with, and I feel like it just makes more sense leaning on the things that I gravitated towards as far back as a kid, which is kind of a weird thought. You don't think about it then, but and I haven't really thought about it until you and I'd been talking about this a little bit, and it is interesting to think how how it's all full circle.
and well, and I think it makes it easier too. Like I think it makes it easier to do things when you're reverting to these because you remember reverting is like a really weird word to use. It's easier to do these things when you're thinking back on these reference points you have as a kid. I'm trying to think of real world examples of this. Can you think of like I've seen your work from I don't know from the very beginning, but when you were working at where were you? You
Early
were working
on.
at somewhere in Boston. What was it called?
Yeah,
Okay,
Arnold
you were working at
Worldwide.
what was it called? Arnold Media or just
Arnold
Arnold?
Worldwide. It's an ad agency in Boston.
Arnold Worldwide. Yeah, such like
The official
it's like
title.
such a classic. Sounds like it should be written for a movie. It just sounds
Yeah, it
like
does.
a really expensive creative place to work.
Yeah.
But I feel like anytime you were putting out work, even then, you were sort of doing things that were nods to this time period. Did you initially do that? It feels like you've leaned into that more as you've gotten older. Does it feel like it's gotten easier as you've resisted it, or did you feel like you resisted it for a long time?
No, I think I was just curious. I think there's a point as like I think all of us creators and those of you who are like more seasoned and have been around longer creating your artwork, you'll realize that like at the beginning you're kind of finding yourself, and in finding yourself you want to explore, you want to try to figure out, you want to have lots of different influences to be inspired by, and you want to be able to uh I feel like if you're only pulling from that one experience, and I say this a lot, people who are listening that have heard me speak before probably heard this a lot, where I talk about how you can't just pull that one, and it's like you can't pull from one well, I guess, and it can't just be like just that the experience of having the that 1960s farmhouse experience. I can't just pull from there. I've had lots of other things in my life that I can pull from, and so sometimes you'll see me experimenting. I think early on I was like doing a lot of experimenting. I still do, but you'll notice that I'm finding myself a little bit more, and I find my clients are finding me more because they're requesting that. They're requesting Brad Woodard or Brave the Woods more than they were in the past, whereas they're like, hey, can you be like this? And I was like, sure. I'll take a stab at it, because I was curious about like what these other styles could do, and then I've kind of cherry picked the things that I liked out of them. But like you said, I kept coming back to this like mid-century style and some other things that I do habitually when I'm illustrating, that I just kind of like are more, I don't know, I guess I just gravitate towards these certain things. Like I would gravitate towards certain brushes of yours. Like you've made thousands of brushes, and I have thousands of your brushes and thousands of other people's brushes, but I use like 10. It's because those are the in special projects I'll kind of branch out, but it's like what you're comfortable with and what you do. So I feel like, yeah, there's it did inspire me like always, but for a long time at the beginning of my career, I was just trying out so many different things that it looked different. I was copying people. I was copying trends. I'm not above that. I'm not above saying that now, but I look back at my work and I'm like, yeah, that was pretty trendy for the time. And it got me a lot of work. It got me a lot of attention. And then I found myself more and more over time.
That's the funny part about it, right? Like, okay, so like I've noticed that too. So Retro Supply is a bunch of vintage stuff. It started with like no, it wasn't informed by anything that was, well, okay, no, it was informed by some stuff that was trendy. There's always cool stuff that's vintage that like informs what you do. And so
Yeah.
I was like, I did like the lockups of, I don't know, like people with like very Portland mustaches and top hats and little, these kind of things. Though they never aged
Yeah.
well. In fact, they've taken off the site because it's so fake. I don't know anything about that. I don't have any nostalgia about like Victorian era men on bicycles with top hats. You know,
Yes.
none of that like
Penny
means
farthing
anything to
money
me. But
sort
the
of.
things that end up sticking around are the things that remind you of real things. So like we have a Woodland Wonderland pack on there, which is very much like a golden book things. When I look at it, it never feels old to me or it never feels like you're following a trend when you do it to me.
Yeah, it's like a tired trend that you're over.
Right. In fact, I don't think it was particularly cool when we did it, and I don't think it's particularly cool now. It's not that it's not cool. It's just that it's not like you kind of jumped on a bandwagon and did it. But I would love to hear if you can think of an example of what is something directly from your childhood, from your past, where you used that and you leveraged it to make your work now. But like specifically, like we both love stuff from mid-century things, or I love like comics from the 80s. I love grunge stuff from the 90s. I love the sub pop, like kind of DIY aesthetic that was happening in the 90s. But what is like one very specific example of something where you can draw a line between that thing and an output that you made now? And how do you feel about it? Does it mean more to you because it came from that?
Okay, am I cheating by talking about like Brave Kids Art Club a bit?
No, I think that's a great one.
It's hard because it's not like I'm trying to think as you're posing the question. I was trying to figure out if it was like, is there something that I'm like, yes, I drew this thing because I saw this thing as a kid, or I drew it kind of in that vibe or that style because of that.
What probably do you mean that Brave Kids Art Club came from something that from the past that you're going to mention?
It is I grew up watching PBS after school. We didn't ever have cable, so I'd only watch whatever was on. And we watched a lot of PBS during the week, right? Our cartoons were only Saturday mornings, so I had after school I could watch Imagination Station. There's another, The Lost City or something like that is what it was called before that. I remember it as Imagination Station with Mark Kistler, and it was a drawing show, and he introduced you to concepts, like drawing concepts and words and terminology, like foreshortening and things like that, where and he would give you a great example, but he had he had a very definite style, like unique style that he illustrated in. But he was able to teach all these concepts, and you were able to kind of find yourself, um, you, like as you were drawing, you didn't feel like I was replicating him. I just felt like I was finding the ways to draw. Anyways, I do the Brave Kids Art Club. I have books in the YouTube show, and I do live stuff, and that whole thing, Brave Kids Art Club, came from just as a kid growing up watching that show, and then now I'm like, I'm nostalgic for it because I didn't see it existing today, and I wanted to put my own version, like my own spin on a drawing show for kids, which mine does have a different angle. But
You kept a lot of the formatting, right?
Yeah.
There's like little nods in the formatting to how you do it.
Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah.
I didn't watch a bunch of that show when I was a kid that you're referring to. I'm familiar with
Yeah.
it, but are there nods to it all throughout it?
Yeah, and I reference it all. Like I actually I go back and watch old episodes. You can watch them on YouTube. And it was interesting because I tried to make a TV show like that, but I tried to make my own version of it. But I was like kind of using that as a reference. Um, but for like YouTube and things, or even for the book, I'm like, just how do I break things down for kids to make it both enjoyable, inserting other facts and info in there that would be interesting, but not like dwelling on it too much where it just feels like you're overloading them with just like all this terminology that they might go over their heads or something like that. But yeah, that's probably the most like one-to-one example I could give is like, I remember growing up with that show and loving that I could draw stuff on my own without the show. That was really important to me. There's a lot of things on YouTube that you can watch, your kids can watch, but they have to follow the exact way that the artist is doing it, because they'll do like a permanent marker or something and draw it and say like, now do a C shape, now do a T over here, a backwards D, whatever. Like,
Right.
and then you have to, and it's quick, it's fun, and you have a really cool piece of art afterwards. But that's not what the Mark Kistler show is. The Mark Kistler show is about teaching you all the terms, all the structures, all the elements, and so that, and the technique, so that when you went on your own, I could just draw anything I wanted in whatever style I wanted, and I really appreciated that. So that would probably be the thing that I've done one-to-one.
Well, and if we go back to the idea of pulling inspiration from childhood and how does that make work you're excited about? How can that help you make work you're excited about? I knew you before you started that, and I've known you the whole time you've been working on that. And that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's one of the most sustained projects in terms of consistency over time that you've ever done. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I'm going on 5 years now, and not, yeah, it's one of those things. I'm not getting paid for it. It's just, just enjoy it.
So they say like, right, some of the things worth doing, they'll often say, what is it saying? Like, it's like the things worth doing are never easy. Yeah. And if you were to choose something that didn't have a very, very strong tie to something important to you, which is oftentimes our past, I think it would be really hard to go for 4 or 5 years doing it.
Yeah. 100%.
Particularly if there's not other incentives for doing it. For instance, you have some financier that's paying you a bunch of money, every month to continue doing it. So, and I think the same thing with Retro Supply. I honestly think that had Retro Supply not been built on something that I was so interested in, it's now 12 years almost doing it. I don't think I would have made it 12 years doing it. I'll be honest. Like I've been doing it 12 years. I'm tired sometimes of doing it. But
sure,
it's a very different tired than on a hard day. It's a different tired than the hardness of trying to hit a 30 new checking accounts
Yeah.
for the month
Yeah.
in a
Exactly.
job because you have nothing emotional to tie it to.
Yeah.
I think that's
I
the
think that's
question you
the
have to ask yourself. If you're like listening, you have to ask yourself, or a great question to ask might be, what is something valuable to me from the past that would increase my sustained effort over time, like
yeah.
in doing something. And
Yeah, and
honestly,
like how can
it makes me think, how many people do we know where this is the case? I feel like this is the case all over the place,
yeah,
and
I
we
can
don't even
name a
think about it.
handful.
I feel like this is, we could like, now I want to think about, where do you see this? Because I feel like you see this everywhere.
Yeah, we were
Um,
talking about Draplin earlier. Like
mhm.
he everything he does, he just feels like he's of that era. We are talking about he grew up in the 80s and everything has that vibe, you know? And so and he doesn't deter from that, and I don't think he and you could that's my question. It's like a lot of times, you know, we look at the art that we're making and are like, am I dating it? Am I not am I dating myself, but am I making something that will go out of style? Like, am I relying too hard on like one era? Like, I always worry about like, I don't want when is the 50s or 60s not going to be exciting again, or like on trend or whatever? Because it seems like it generally is. Most people love mid-century stuff, but but that's made me think about in my own career, like how do I, as an artist, separate myself from the era and make myself something unique on its own that's inspired by that era? Because if I can sit too long just replicating something, then I become that knockoff that I don't want to collect. You know, I have all these things behind me in my office. I surround myself with these amazing antiques and like images from like, you know, paper goods or packaging or things like that are of that era because they inspire me, but I like the history behind them. But if someone else was to create something like a toy or something, but like a novelty toy or something, and packaging, and it looks retro, and they're just trying to pass it off as something retro so that you buy it, like I have no interest in it to buy it.
Right.
It's a weird situation. Like I'm trying to figure out like where I fit in, because if my artwork, because a lot of times I feel like sometimes I do that. Like clients will ask me to replicate an era, and I
Mhm.
create that work, and then is that just, am I just being a knockoff brand, or am I just you know what I mean? I often think about that. So I've tried very very hard to put my own spin on that era, not have it, like I said earlier, don't just rely on that era for the only source of inspiration. What else in my life can I throw into it? And I like to throw in like a lot of colors, or I like to throw in more geometric stuff from my graphic design background or my time living in the Philippines. I love bringing in some really bold, crazy colors and textures and patterns and things like that. So I'm trying to find ways to make it so that it has a life beyond just being, I don't want to be like a knockoff to like that era. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it totally does. And I think, well, I would say there's two things that makes me think of. One is, has to mean, obviously has to mean something to you. I think that if something really matters, for instance, people that are listening can't see it, but I have something over here that's from Robin Banks. It's a recreation of a game.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Very
yeah.
much, yeah, very much a knockoff of one could argue that it's a knockoff of something from the 60s, and they are just knocking something off from that. But they handmade it. They absolutely love it. They live and breathe it. Um, they did everything with their friends by hand, from screen printing the board to having someone cut the pieces, that the little wood pieces that you shoot around on the board. And there is something different
It's
about
awesome.
that than there is about going to Target and buying the exact same thing that is just there to make money. I think someone put it well about regarding art when they were like, well, what if you could get this amazing piece of art you love? I don't know, let's say it's a Picasso,
Yeah.
some sketch from Picasso or something that's within the realm of buying. Um, if someone got a sketch from Picasso and they put it in front of you and you said, I love it, and they said it's $1,000 for this sketch, or like five, one time I saw one for like five or 3,000 or something.
Yeah.
And then you paid them and they said, I have a surprise for you. This is actually an artist that's so good at making Picassos that they replicated this sketch, you can't tell the difference, can you? No one can tell the difference. There's no way to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Would it matter to you? And the answer is, of course, it would matter to you.
100%.
Why does
Yeah.
it matter? It looks exactly the same, and it's because the intention behind it matters. And I think
Yeah.
that comes down a lot to like what makes the things from our past like useful is how much does it matter? If it matters, it's irreplaceable. Or if it matters,
Yeah.
it never gets old. It never feels cheesy. It never feels like you're ripping stuff off or whatever. If it means
That's a good
nothing,
point.
then it's sort of empty.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I make I sometimes I contribute to that noise, I think. Like I make things and but that's something that like I try. It's a good thing to think about, I think, as an artist. Like if you do prefer working within a certain era, like what makes it authentic? Like what part of the process maybe makes it authentic? Like you were talking about Robin, they hand screen print these things. They host events and then they play music from like the 60s and they're like old vinyls and they live and breathe that era. And I feel like it's very authentic. I feel like it's not a ripoff. It is something that they truly live. And so, for me, I'm thinking, and maybe I'm posing this as a question, maybe that I'm asking myself, and maybe other artists and creatives listening can ask yourselves, is just like, what is it, if it is something that you really like, what are you adding to it? Like what authentic part of it are you adding to the artwork that you're creating? Whether it is you live and breathe it and you just do it so well that it would feel like you are just an artist of that era, and you have your own style within that aesthetic. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe there's just like you do something unique, whether it's colors or the application or something like that you do that makes it worth picking up. I was listening to an episode, a podcast episode with Andy J Pizza, and he was talking about, it was right off the heels of everybody worrying about AI taking over. And I don't want to get off on a side tangent. I think this would be a whole nother conversation that you and I could have, and we have had before, related to AI and artwork. But the question of authenticity, he made a statement about people, like you can't bake that, you can't just code that in. It has to be authentic. That's something that just kind of comes off of a product or artwork, because when it's made by a computer, you could tell there's just something about it. There's not life behind it. But when it is made by an artist and they're making it like they're very passionate about it, you can always feel that, and there's always a story behind it, and you can kind of, I don't know, that's what makes it. That's what brings that human element to it. But that made me think about authenticity and like, what am I bringing to it that make this authentic? Because I care so much about things that are authentic that I purchase myself and I surround myself with in my office. I don't want to add to the kitschy knockoff stuff just to put it out there and to, I don't know, make money off of an aesthetic or an era.
I think too, maybe like a question to ask about it too, like is how much those kind of things matter to you too. Like, for instance, lots of people, and this is not like, this is not, uh, I don't think this conflicts with what you're saying. I think lots of people we know love kitschy stuff. It depends on what you come from.
It's true.
Oftentimes they say we try to compensate for the things that we didn't have when we grew up. So if you grew up with a lot of refined things all around you, you may desperately want kitschy things because they feel playful and disposable, and like you can break them, and so it makes up for it, something that you were missing in some way. If you grew up very impoverished, you may really want designer brands because you're sort of making up for this thing you didn't have, and so it pulls that from you. But the point being, like, if you enjoy doing it, doesn't matter. So for instance, with Retro Supply, we're making digital things out of vintage things. We do a bunch of ads, we get a bunch of comments from people, and it's largely right. We're targeting people that love this stuff, and they love it. And they're
Yeah.
people just like Robin Banks, who we were just talking about. Some people are like, well, it's digital. It's not really that thing. Why would you do that? And
Got
I don't
it.
know, I guess like for me, like I think, well, do I care? Like I like doing it.
Sure.
I like living my life doing this. And so I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the
Yeah,
fact that some people would object or not like it. I guess the point just being like, if in the moment you love it, maybe that's enough. If
that
that
could be
keeps you
enough.
going, if that makes you do the work daily and it pays the bills and you are doing something where you're like, yeah, this is a really enjoyable way to spend my time. Maybe that's
That's a
enough.
good point.
And I guess that depends on the priorities, right? I think it's a reasonable priority to say, I want this to be authentic. And that's a huge priority to me. But I think it kind of
Yeah.
varies by person.
No, I think it's like that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm maybe projecting my just my own insecurities about it all, or even just my own preferences around it, because like
Because you
I
very
don't know.
much do love authentic. I mean, the stuff behind you, like I've been to your
Yeah,
house, I've known you forever. You do love all of that authentic stuff. That's important to you,
yeah,
that it is really that thing. And that's good.
yeah.
And it's also
But I
good, I
mean,
think, if someone wants cheap
the kitschy
knockoffs
stuff.
that are kitschy, yeah, like there's room for all of it.
I think they're right. Yeah, I think there definitely is room for all it. And I think it's like with when you're pulling it back to the original question, where it's like, like how can you pull that inspiration? And I feel like it's just I feel like then it opens it up to just being like whatever works for you, like whatever inspires your creativity or makes you happy when you're working. Because I think the more inspired you are, clearly the better your work's going to be, and the more you're going to enjoy the process. So I feel like it's you and I could go out, and we have gone antiquing and collect stuff forever. The problem with going antiquing with you is I feel like you'll grab something and then I want it, but there's only one of it. It's not like you're going to the store where there's like endless amounts of it. So you and I are usually
You
fighting
kind of have
over
a
the
better
same
eye than me,
things.
so I feel like you'll always end up picking it first. You're like, oh, look. And to me, it
Right.
looked really dumb. And then, like, when you pulled it and you're like, no, that, and then you'll put it in your office. And I'm like, how did I admit? Like, you're great at seeing it out of context and then realizing how good it will
Oh,
look in the
well,
proper
thank you.
context.
In the proper context. Yeah. It's just, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm always, like I said earlier, it's like, I feel like I was hunting for something. I don't. Maybe I am like looking for when I go picking or antiquing. It's like I'm looking for stuff that just. And I think it always ends up being that era because it just feels good, like it feels right, and then I love it because it ends up making it like it's not work. It's not as much work. I feel like when you already kind of live and breathe that stuff, and then I would be doing this on any random Saturday afternoon anyways. Like I wouldn't. I'd be antiquing, and so now I can antique for work because now I'm looking for inspiration, which I know you do with retro supply, and that's what I think is cool about retro supply is like it very much can be taken as like a kitschy website, like a kitschy product, but
Yeah.
so many professionals use it as a amazing resource. And the thing is you don't have to use retro products in a retro way, which I think is like I learned because I can use the same tool to do any other style. It's just a way to package it and to market it,
Yeah.
and it fits
Just
that needs,
vehicle. Right.
But do you ever feel like that? Do you ever feel like when you're making these products, like do you ever have like an authenticity issue, or are you just like I really want to make this as authentic to that era as possible because then people can replicate it directly and then do whatever else they want with it? Or is there like a I guess like are you having what is your reason for making like
We're having
old
like
retro
existential
products?
crises about like what's going on.
Yeah.
No, no. I mean, I think that it's probably what we talked about earlier. It's that when you do it, you try to like, I think that myself and anyone who's worked for me, you end up doing it. You end up making stuff and saying, what would someone that feels like I do about this stuff want, or what would it require for them to enjoy it? So, um, if I was to buy like a half tone pack, for instance, like to me, it's really cool if I know that that was sourced from real old halftones. To me, it's really that makes it could just be a lie, right? You could just lie to people and tell them that it was sourced from and it's not.
Yeah.
And it would have a placebo effect and it would work the same way. Um, but really sourcing it, I think, makes it more powerful to people in their minds, which then makes them more emboldened or more confident and they feel a certain way, right? It's kind of like when you
Yeah.
get a new pair of shoes as a kid and you swear that they make you run faster. I remember going
Yeah.
to like Payless, and I thought like Payless shoes were going to do this, like of all places. I remember putting on Payless shoes, and then like the test I had to do before I got the shoes was sprint back and forth across the carpeted aisles of the store over boxes of shoes that were still on the ground. And you would swear that you were going faster because like I thought there was something going on with the rubber in the shoes
The
where it was fresher and
technology
bouncier, and it was
in the soles.
exhilarating accelerating how quickly I moved. But it wasn't. And so, anyways, I think that really finding those things and putting them into it does something for people, and you do it properly as much as you can because that makes it better. And um, maybe the whole thing is a lot of it is it just depends on who you are. I think I always just look and I'm like, I love doing this. A bunch of people love doing it. They're glad it's
Yeah.
around, and that's enough. Knowing that a bunch of people are making artwork and they love doing it because of that is
Yeah.
awesome. But I think that does like bring up another thing is that some people I think could be listening and being like, well, I don't want to pull things from my childhood. That's not me. I'm not going to pull like this aesthetic from my childhood and put it into my work. But I think this can also apply to things you can't see or they don't visually look old. So
Yeah.
for instance, like maybe you're a designer and what originally got you into it was that you loved drawing tons of little like I remember people that used to make these very elaborate, almost like Where's Waldo, like the classic Where's Waldo
Yeah.
book style, like little tiny drawings of things, and it'd be little tanks and little guns and little people.
I did that.
Did you know people like that?
Yeah,
Or was that
I
you?
did it. Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
I drew a full battle scenes like that.
Right. Like these things were time consuming. People would work on them and they would have whole, like peachy folders full of these things and like a library of maps that they made.
I'm curious how many people would be like, yeah, I remember doing it. Because I would pull out a sheet of paper, like a big sheet of paper, and draw like a literal entire battle, like little parachuting, little paratroopers coming down, getting shot out by tanks and stuff. But it was like a full scene, and I did this a lot.
I'd be curious too. Let us know. Because I would do that with guns. Like I would make like elaborate science fiction guns and make whole like diagrams of sheet after sheet of like science fiction.
You took it further than I did then.
Elaborate guns.
Mine are like stick figures.
Well, I did that too. But the thing being like, if you really love doing that, like I don't do that anymore. But like, let's say you were like, man, I really feel like I'm struggling with part of my process of doing this kind of design work. Well, how can you incorporate the satisfaction of making very elaborate sheets of related ideas? I mean, to go back to Aaron Draplin, if you ever see him draw when he's coming up with logos, he doesn't have the refinement that, I don't know, like some other people I have seen do when he draws logos. It looks like that. He gets a sheet of paper or a little notebook, or little field notes, whatever he wants to use.
A little notebook.
And he draws lots of little, not beautiful things as an 8th grader could do it. But he has mastered, he's getting ideas down. He's not trying to be perfect, but he loves having, I think he loves having that satisfaction of a nice full page of the little designs he's made. And I feel like he's chained together so many little things like that he loves. And they don't even have to sometimes they certainly don't have to look retro. They don't have to look vintage. They're just something you love from being a kid. How can you activate those little parts of yourself when you were a kid into what you do today to make it funner? It's funner, more fun.
Someone's going to correct you. I'll leave it there. You
can count on that. End it with a preposition.
Exactly. Yeah, I was like, I did lots of little things like as a kid that I was like, I pull a lot of things that I liked as a kid. So I noticed that the work I create now is very, especially as I've gotten older, I care more, I think more, I guess, about what it is I'm leaving behind, like what I'm creating. Am I making a dent? Am I doing anything? Like I have, my kids are getting older. They ask what I do. My dad didn't ever really like what he did. And so he never, ever told us what he did. Data storage is all I could say is that I know.
Oh, really? I didn't know that's what he did.
Yeah, I don't even fully know what that means. Like, I knew he was like IT. I don't even know if that's included in data storage, but that's what he was. He was like a team leader at one point. All to say, I just don't know what he did really. And he didn't care to tell me because he really didn't care. It wasn't his passion. He went to school for geology. And he has a geology degree, and ended up in, data storage. And I remember him never loving talking about it. And for me, I was like, what am I going to tell my kids? Like, they're like, what did you work on today? And now I can tell them, like, oh, I drew like dinosaurs today, or I did whatever. It's like, it's fun, but is it contributing? Like, am I doing anything? And so I feel like when I'm looking back on like what I create, what I grew up with, I kind of like to pull from that, because it gives me like some of that stuff, like, oh, that kind of helps me figure out what my purpose is as an artist. Like, for example, I grew up backpacking, and spending time camping and being outdoors, and I loved it. Built forts out in the woods, always was outside. Just love the outdoors. How could I affect that today? I mean, like, I'm working, some of my clients are like the Nature Conservancy, or I've done work for like the Texas Parks and Wildlife. I did stuff for the 59 Parks Project. I'm doing Brave Kids Art Club. The whole thing is about nature and animals, and that's my emphasis. We draw lots of other things, but that's mainly what I like to draw about, and encouraging kids to like explore and be outside and be curious about the world around them, and take care of the world around them. So like, it's like I'm bringing in those things that meant so much to me as a kid, and I'm trying to preserve them in what I'm doing now. And it's bringing me so much joy. It honestly is, because I'm, I'll be completely candid. I'm like still thousands of dollars in debt from bad ideas that I tried to implement for Brave Kids Art Club. Like, I'm making money off our books, a little bit off of YouTube, but it's not making up for the failed like first season, like pilot season that I made of a TV show, and hired a videographer and editor. And I did it all because I just wanted to be all in. And I felt like, anyways, that's a whole nother story, but it's helped me kind of influence what I'm doing today. And I'm feeling so much more fulfilled in the work that I'm creating today, because it's wrapped around the things that I cared about since I was a kid.
Well, yeah, and then that's when you say that, like, I think like if you what's the word? If you silo that project or that first season, whatever,
Mhm.
into one category, into one box, you can say that cost me thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Um, but if you spread it out and say, what projects did I get as a result of that? Or what did it bring to how I contribute to another project that I've done? Or what did it do? Or did it give me energy during those years to do other projects, because
Yeah.
of the excitement and the energy that it put into me? Would I have made it as well through those years if I had not had that thing? The answer could be really different. I think it's really easy to like measure things like that and determine that they weren't successful in some small short-sighted metric, because it also answers the question of you were like, well, how am I making an impact?
Yeah.
What am I leaving behind? It could very well be that what you end up leaving behind that is of note, if that's something you care about, is that everything else, that the advertisements and the things for companies slowly fade off, and that a handful of great books you worked on and an educational series is what stands out. I feel like a ton of artists, ton of creatives, the work that is most longstanding and important is oftentimes a long-term investment. It did not pay off that
Yeah.
year. It paid off
That's
20
true.
years later.
I I just I just bought this board game from the 50s, and the cover art is insanely beautiful. 1950s, like atomic space age stuff, just incredible. But I looked up the artist as D Lock, like D period Lock. And I was looking up that person, and the one D Lock that I found as an artist does not fit the same type of art. So I could not find this person. And it really made me like think back to my own life. And I'm like, I find it beautiful, and I think it was amazing artwork, but I can find nothing about them. They just disappeared off the planet. No information about this artist. And so it's not talent alone. This might be another whole thing that we should talk about later. But, I just, like, on that note, was like, it really made me think about like, what am I contributing? What am I doing? And I can pull from my childhood, which this stuff really makes me happy. A lot of these experiences I had as a kid, a lot of the things I loved and appreciated, I want to keep and preserve. I'm bringing them into the stuff that I'm doing now because it's meaningful to me. I don't want to just be, the existential part is like, I don't want to be forgotten, but also I want to be happy when I'm creating now, and the stuff that I'm creating now. And it become as I'm creating stuff that's more me, it's more authentic. The more people you can find your following, right? Like you can get those people rallying around you, supporting what it is because it's authentic and this is me. And I'm the stuff that I create, really reflects what I care about.
So if we were to wrap this up by taking
Nugget.
one thing from each of us as a piece of advice on how can you pull inspiration from your childhood to help you make work that matters to you that you're excited about, what
Yeah.
would your biggest takeaway, if you could tell people just one thing, be?
I think when we're kids, I feel like you're just really, really authentic. You're genuine. Like when you're a young kid, the things that you do and the things you enjoy, the things you participate in, like I feel like that's like real, true, truly authentic you. I feel like rarely do people change so much like those core things in their core, young life that's the stuff that you're like, oh, that they've always liked that. And they're always kind of, they do other things. And then as they get older, they get into find other interests, but there's like these core things, core memories, core identifiers that make you when you're young, that just stick with you. And I feel like if you can kind of just go back to those, find what those are. It could be a thing. It could be a personality trait. It could be an experience. It could, I don't know. There's so many things it could be. But I feel like if you can go back to what those are and you kind of incorporate those and try to save those or celebrate those in your art today, I feel like you're going to be really, really happy with what you're making. I think there's so much of the time as artists, we're always trying to find who we are and where we are and what our style is. And I think that's just like, it's like constantly trying to figure out what we want to do. What do we want to be known for? But I feel like if we can step back and just look in the past, pull from that early, look at what we liked and what we gravitated towards, then I feel like sometimes you can just pull away little things that you could try to incorporate in your work now. And it could just be all the difference between making you happy or really making it feel like your stuff is unique and authentic to you.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Taking the time to sort of consciously look back and take an inventory, maybe even spending some time over a couple of days. I would love to do this for myself. Maybe even
Yep.
spending some time consciously thinking, what are the things that constantly bubble up in the back of my mind that I loved that I
Yeah.
should focus on more. And I would say, related to that, something that I would recommend is find a practice that you can, yeah, these are related. Find a practice that you can do on a daily basis or on a regular basis that you did as a kid, and do it. Just like, even if you don't know exactly how it plays out. I really got stuck on that because I remembered all those little drawings and things like that. They were very imperfect. The whole point was to fill them up and make a very busy. It was like the measure of success was not how well everything was drawn. The measure of success was how well did you fill up every single area of that page with little details. And
That's interesting.
if you just sit down and
That's
do
interesting.
that for whatever your thing is you love, I feel like by the time you're done spending 15, 20 minutes doing that in a day, you will find a solution to something. And I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
I always find that when I do something like that, which is not very often, that you'll find unexpected solutions. You'll reduce your stress. Um, Unexpected surprise coincidences will happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That process just made me think of literally, that's just how I feel like you didn't care. Like just going back to what you were saying, like drawing those little scenes, you didn't care like necessarily what it looked like all the time. I feel like I remember there's like a stat or something about like when kids start being really self-conscious about their art, and then they would start pointing out other people pretty early on, like by third grade or something, they no longer have confidence in themselves being an artist. They point out the kids who are good at art. And like in kindergarten, they're all pointing at themselves. They all raise their hand and say they're all artists. But then by third grade, they all point to other people. And I think like maybe that's like a good takeaway and a good thing to end on is just like, remember when you were a kid and you just made art to make art and you didn't care. Sometimes the act of just filling out a sketchbook, the act of just drawing without trying to get money from it, just drawing, not trying to please anybody else. I feel like maybe that's one thing I'm going to take away. That's my second one. That's what I want to take away from this, is I want to like tap into that when I was a kid and just create for the joy of creating. And I think like taking time to do that and step away from it as a career and as trying to like solve all these problems. Like I need to find my style. I need to make this client happy. Just doing that, I think, will be a good break and a good practice for everyone and that's what Brave Kids Art Club was for me. It was like full creative liberty for myself. And maybe it's a side project or whatever that you want to start and do. It's just for you and something that you love and can take, I think will be wise advice.
And interestingly, I think those are largely the things that contribute to the success of things like Brave Kids Art Club. I don't think that succeeds or doesn't succeed based on that you integrated those things. It succeeds because of those things, and other challenges, you notice the other challenges that have not been overcome on something like that. But the ones that were not an issue was certainly the things from your past that you pulled into it. I don't think anyone will argue those are the successes.
Yeah.
There's also a satisfaction, I guess, to wrap it up, there's also a satisfaction. It's almost an insurance policy against total lack of fulfillment if you incorporate things from your past into it that you care about. Because even if it doesn't do well, you won't feel like it was a waste of time. Like I've done a lot of products where they didn't do as well as I thought they would. And they definitely feel satisfying if they were something that I loved.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't do financially well, it's much easier to recover from the gut punch of something not succeeding when you loved it. It's very hard when you traded time doing something that you didn't have any interest in and it doesn't work out, because then you double lose, you know?
That's true. That's true. Well, good. I feel like this is a topic I can continue talking on forever. And I'm sure this will come back up in future episodes and whatnot. But
yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And we'll talk to you next week. If you're getting value from these conversations, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get bonus content, early access to episodes, and help us keep bringing you the honest stories from creatives who figured it out. Check it out at patreon.com/creative/.